One school day, a boy named Tom was sitting in his class doing maths. As he was doing his work, something caught his eye. His desk was next to the window. He turned and looked to the grass outside. There was a picture lying on the grass. When school was over, he ran to the spot. He ran so fast so no one else could grab it. He picked it up and smiled. It had a picture of the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She had a dress with tights on and red shoes, and her hand was formed into a peace sign. She was so beautiful he wanted to meet her, so he ran all over the school and asked everyone if they knew her or had seen her before. Everyone he asked said no. When he was home, he asked his older sister if she knew the girl. She said no. It was very late, and Tom walked up the stairs, placed the picture on his bedside table, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Tom was awakened by a tap on his window. It was like a nail tapping. He got scared. After the tapping, he heard a giggle. He saw a shadow near his window, so he got out of his bed, walked towards the window, opened it up and followed the giggling. By the time he reached it, it was gone. The next day, he asked his neighbours if they knew her. Everybody said no. When his mother came home, he even asked her if she knew her. She said no. He went to his room, placed the picture on his bedside table once again, and fell asleep. Once again he was awakened by a tapping. He took the picture and followed the giggling. He walked across the road, when suddenly he got hit by a car. He was dead with the picture in his hand. The driver got out of the car to help him, but it was too late. Suddenly he saw the picture and picked it up. He saw the cute girl holding up 3 fingers.
I was in Taiwan one year when I was younger and had travelled to a busy night market. These are popular gatherings that usually operate in the evening. Nearby, I spotted a sign for a net cafe in a 5 to 6 story tall building. Thinking I'd fire off some quick emails, I walked in the dark, small entrance of the building. The building was older and hadn't been well maintained, but it's not out of the ordinary in Taiwan. The entrance just had a dark hallway that led to a small elevator. I pressed the elevator call button and entered. The elevator was uncharacteristically new compared to the building, but I didn't think much of it. Like some Chinese buildings, there wasn't a 4th floor. It's considered bad luck since 4 sounds like death. So it just read 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, which was usual. I looked for the floor the net cafe was at, the 6th floor, and pressed the button. It lurched into action quietly and began the ascend. When it stopped, I figured it was my floor, so I instinctively began to step out. Right before stepping out, however, the sight outside the elevator stopped me. It was pitch dark, only lit by the light in the elevator. It looked like it hadn't been occupied for decades, with some random pieces of furniture covered with white cloth or similar. It was a small building, so each floor was single occupancy, so I could see pretty much the entire floor from the elevator. Thinking I must have gotten off at the wrong floor, I checked the light that indicates which floor you're on. Strangely, there was nothing. None of the indicators were on, but the floor button to the net cafe was still lit, so I know I haven't got there yet. All this happened within a couple of seconds. That's when I noticed a figure moving in the distance of the floor. It was not very visible, but I could make out what looked like a person dressed in some kind of gown, moving slowly towards the elevator. I was thoroughly creeped out, so I started pressing the closed door button. As soon as I pressed it, the elevator light flickered off. I am this close to pissing my pants, and it's actually kind of freaking me out thinking back to it. The lights flicked back on under a second, and the door closed. The elevator jolted back to life. A few moments later, it opened again to the net cafe. I am beyond relieved at this point. I walked out immediately and sat down at a computer. After gathering my wits a bit, I walked over to the cashier's desk and told them what I saw. The girl working there listened, and her face turned a bit ashen, so I asked her if she'd heard of similar. She told me that she's never experienced it, but some co-workers and occasional customers have brought it up. Basically, the building has 6 floors, and the 4th floor had a history. Apparently, the floor used to be a hair salon of sorts, until one of the employees killed herself there for some reason. She slit her wrists over the hair wash station and died. The store continued operations, despite stories of weird appearances. When customers got their hair rinsed, the water would look a little red, like the customer was bleeding. Little things like that. And a couple of people reported seeing someone's figure walking away in the mirror. Naturally, the business closed down a few months later. The building owner tried to re-rent the place out, but never had any luck. Most businesses are quite superstitious, and no one wanted to rent the 4th floor after someone had died in it, even at a very cheap price. Finally, after dropping the price to nearly nothing, a stationery supply store wanted to rent. During the renovations of the floor, however, several accidents would happen. Tools would end up in strange places, a mirror from the previous business shattered when no one was near it, and finally, a worker had his hand jammed between the elevator doors when it closed on him unexpectedly. The workers refused to continue working, and finally the business left, and the building owner finally gave up and shut down the floor. He then had the elevator company come in to replace a panel so that the elevator could not go to the 4th floor. Let me repeat that. The elevator was programmed to never go to the 4th floor. It doesn't even have a button, but for some reason, sometimes when people take the elevator, it would go to the 4th floor and the doors would open, and some, like myself, would see a figure walking around in the dark.
My son had woken me up for the 2nd night running, saying there was something in his room. Something that scared him so much. Something that caused him to sob uncontrollably. He's only 6, so I couldn't hold it against him. I think we all got scared of the dark, didn't we? Not a peep out of my daughter though, I remember that. She's the same age, but she is silent as I led my son back to his own room. I took him back to bed, tucked him in, and kissed his head. His tears had dried and his blue eyes glistened in the light of his bedside lamp. He had the same eyes as his mum, who had been gone 5 months by this point. Those 5 months had flown by, but it was so tough, coping with that and raising twins as a single dad. Feels like yesterday she was here with us, and she would have been helping to comfort our son. His nightly glass of milk sat beside his bed, half empty, or half full depending on how you see things. I asked him to repeat after me, "There are no such things as monsters." If he could just keep that in his head, say it to himself over and over again, maybe it would sink in. I hoped it would, to comfort him. I wouldn't let anything happen to him, and I told him that. He said he missed his mum and wanted her back. I remember holding back tears and telling him I missed her. I wanted her back too, but knew she was watching over us. I didn't believe that last bit though, and nobody knew just how much I missed her. This became a ritual for us for the following 2 nights. He would come in crying and wake me up. He would tell me a pair of red eyes were in his closet, along with the sound of breathing. Each time I did the same thing, took him back to his room, tucked him in, kissed his head and asked him to repeat, "There are no such things as monsters." If there was something in his closet, it was gone now. My daughter asked me more than once what was going on, and I told her not to worry. I didn't need her getting scared too. On the 5th night, I bought my son his usual glass of milk. I watched him take a big gulp and reached down to kiss his forehead, knowing it would be the last time that I do that, knowing that tonight is the night he will be taken. I told him I love him, that he should have a good night's sleep, and waited at the door for his eyes to close. It didn't take long for those sleeping pills to kick in. It was easy to hide them in his nightly glass of milk. I closed the door and a single tear rolled down my cheek. I'm not proud of anything, but it was the only way to bring her back, the only way to have my wife back in my arms. That's the deal I was offered, the choice I had to make. Let them take one of my children. I could choose which one, and she comes back to me. They told me it would be the 5th night, that he would be watched until then. I hope I helped him during his last nights. I'm still his father and I love him. I hoped she would understand why I chose him instead of our daughter. I did it for her, so when she comes back her little girl is still here, so when she comes back we can still be a family. But she hasn't come back. The only thing that happened was my son vanished in the middle of the night and was never seen again. They took him, and I got nothing in return. Nothing apart from a broken-hearted little girl who lost her mother and twin brother in the space of 6 months. I'll never forgive myself. I can't even try and justify this in my own head anymore. I cry myself to sleep every night. I'd give anything to bring my son a glass of milk or kiss his head. I miss him, and now they've said they want my daughter too. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I upload stories on a weekly basis. And please, sleep well.